The Ford Everest might be about to be replaced by an all-new generation, but the simple fact is the outgoing Everest is still better than every vehicle it competes with. And in this video, which is not sponsored content, it's just the independent truth about the 2022 Everest, I'm going to explain why this vehicle is so good. But first of all, I'll tell you what this one behind me actually is. Finished in silver with silver detailing. This is the Everest Trend, basically the mid-spec model of the Everest lineup here in Australia, and I think it's the sweet spot. It isn't cheap. The Ford Everest as a vehicle is not cheap. It's quite a lot more expensive than a Toyota Fortuner, a Mitsubishi Pajero Sport, even the new Isuzu MUX. This Trend 2-litre bi-turbo diesel with four-wheel drive is over $67,000 drive away, despite being a model that is about to be superseded here in Australia with a new Australian developed generation of the Everest. However, this being the sweet spot, I think you still get a level of value for money. And in this video, I'm going to take you through the interior of the Everest, the back seat, the third row, the boot. We'll discuss the running costs of this four-wheel drive, and then we'll head out on road and off to explain why this vehicle's dynamics are really what sets it apart from the fairly agricultural vehicles that it competes with. Of course, it helps that the Ford Everest is an Australian engineered car, and you can really tell on our local roads. But before we get started, make sure to hit subscribe. And if at any point in this video you feel like you've heard enough and you'd like to buy a Ford Everest, I've dropped a handy link below this video with the brochure, the car configurator, so you can see all the colors, and you can also organize a test drive by taking the next step with chasing cars. Here at the rear end of the Ford Everest, I think this is probably this vehicle's weakest angle, where it looks softest. I actually quite like the front end of this car, but one thing we'll be looking for in the next generation Everest is a slightly more aggressive rear end. You can just tell that it's dating a little bit with these curvy lines. That being said, styling is absolutely subjective. You can let me know down below in the comments if you disagree with me. Now, this silver car is fairly conservatively specified. The Trend has a lot of chrome. If you don't like that, you can go for the Everest Sport that Ponch reviewed for us recently. We've also got the accessory tow bar fitted to this car. Now, we do actually get a power tailgate, though it's a bit geriatric and takes quite a long time to open. Once it is open, you find this vehicle's 876 litres of boot space. Stand by for the ball test, where we'll see exactly how much you can fit in here. But it's a big open square space. The load height isn't too bad. Underneath the boot floor, you've got your jack and a bit of storage. We have an underslung full-size spare in this vehicle. There's some storage off to the left, a 12-volt socket, and really interestingly, we actually have power operation for the third row seat in the Ford Everest, which is not something I would have expected from the level 2 car, perhaps the titanium, which is a little bit more expensive. So that's a really nice feature, meaning you don't have to put your back out. Plus, we have power operation here to close the tailgate, but we don't have a discrete button to lock the vehicle at this point. So if you wanted to walk away, you'd have to walk back to the front door to lock it, or use the key fob in your hand. And when it comes to the chasing cars soccer ball test, the Everest's 876 litre boot translates into 51 balls below the window line. I think that from some angles at least, the Ford Everest is still quite a looker. And when you jump here into the cabin, you find a space that is functional, but visually is starting to date a little bit. Now, that's not always a bad thing, because sometimes vehicles that are not brand new have interiors that have been thoroughly worked out and everything actually works as it should, and that's exactly how it is in the Ford Everest. You can tell it's getting on in years from the small screen. I think some of these kind of faux metal finishes are a little bit dated, and then it is a button fest down here. That being said, car journalists often criticize a button fest, but when you own the car and you drive it every day, you obviously learn where all of the buttons are. And hard buttons are a lot better than burying climate controls in a touchscreen. So kudos to Ford for not doing that yet, although I think the new generation Everest is going to go further in that direction with a much bigger vertical touchscreen. Now, this is the Trend, just over 67 grand drive away for the 2-litre full drive here in New South Wales. You can save about 1,500 bucks for going for the old 3.2 litre 5-cylinder. You can save about $5,000 if you don't care about having full drive. And I think a lot of people probably don't need that and will be fine with just rear-wheel drive on this car. Either way, the Trend feels well specified inside. It doesn't feel like you're being shortchanged because you skipped out on the Sport or the titanium. We still have leather seats, power adjustment for the driver, no thigh angle adjust, but the seat base is at least in a decent angle as it is. Plus, I've got manual lumbar over here, making this a comfortable vehicle to drive. Sadly, the passenger seat is treated as a second-class citizen. It doesn't even have height adjustment, nor does it have lumbar. And if you're going around Australia with a caravan, your passenger's back is going to feel that. There should always be lumbar in the passenger seat as well. Now, we've got a leather wrapped steering wheel with a nice stitch around it. Simple controls for the dual, trip computers here in the partially digital gauge cluster, and then a simple analog speedo. Now, a lot of the interior design is shared with the Ranger Ute, which is of course closely related to the Everest, although like most ute-based wagons, we're running coil springs at the rear rather than leaf springs. So this is designed to be more of a comfortable on-road touring and towing vehicle, though it is quite capable off-road as well. Here in the center, we have an 8-inch touchscreen running Ford Sync 3. Now, the graphics do look a little old school, but the system is extremely snappy with good processing power behind it. We've got clear shortcuts for audio, maps, Apple CarPlay. It works well. You don't need an instruction manual to learn it, which I love. Now, in terms of material quality, we actually do have a soft dash topper, hard doors, giving away that Ranger connection. But all in all, it feels pretty well built, this car. In terms of the things that you miss by not going to the titanium, we don't get heated seats, which at 67 grand does feel a bit cheap. And we also don't get a sunroof. You would get that if you stepped up to the titanium, plus things like 20-inch wheels and automated parking, if that's something you care about. Storage, 2 cup holders here, big bin ahead of the shifter, though no wireless charging, but you do get a USB port here, another one down here in the tray, plus a dash cam USB port too. Box between the seats, and a cup and a bottle holder in the door, I should say, that will take a big bottle. Plus, lots and lots of grab handles for off-roading. That's up front. Let's check out the second row. Now, I'm not here to tell you that the Everest isn't priced like a premium option in this segment, because it is. Ford have clearly positioned it above the price of many of its rivals. But one thing I want to tell you is that a lot of the attention to detail on this car is better than some of its ute-based wagon competitor slash rivals. Now, this is a body on frame vehicle, and one of the issues that we have with frame vehicles is often that high floor means that your legs are floating in the second row. But Ford have avoided that because the thigh angle on the seat where it's fixed is proper. So as you can see, my legs are being supported. I could do a few hours in the back of this more comfortably than in some other options in the segment. Now, this middle seat, it almost looks like its own seat, but it is a bit of a perch. There is a hump in the floor, but you can get an adult there if you have to. But the outboard is where they'll be most comfortable. Headroom for a 6-foot is good, knee room's good, toe room, there's heaps of it. Looking up here, that's also where you'll find your air vents, one for each outboard passenger. They have their own fan control down here in the center. That's where you'll also find a household power point, love that, and another 12-volt socket. Map pockets in both of the front seats, no USB ports, so you'll need to use one of those dinky adapters in the 12-volt. Still hard materials back here, but again, the build of this vehicle feels okay. This one's got about 6,000 hard driven kilometers on it, no rattles or squeaks that I was able to pick up. Finally, nice hefty center armrest with cup holders, exposed Isofix points. We'll come back to that for some baby seat action. And the back seats, they recline a little bit. That's the second row. This car does have a deployable third row, and I'm going to put myself there to see if I can fit. Entrance to the third row for kids could be more graceful and safer if the small piece of the second row, which is 60/40, was on the curbside. And it's weird because so much of the Everest is clearly engineered for right-hand drive, developed here in Australia, built in Thailand, both right-hand drive markets. The indicator stalk's on the correct side. It says digital speedo, which is a real Australianism. Even the button for the power tailgate is on the curbside. So why isn't the 40 piece of the 60/40 rear seat? It means that to get in easily, you've got to come in on the roadside or clamber over a big kind of unwieldy seat on the curbside. Anyway, rant over. For myself at 6 foot, headroom, I've just got an absolute skerrick. But legroom's fine. I could be back here for 45 minutes or so, but kids will love it. They've got cup holders, they'll be happy. They've got their own air vents as well. So as an occasional 6th and 7th seat, this is pretty good actually. Of course, we've done baby seats. You might be considering an Everest as a family vehicle, or if you're retired, planning to do some towing with the car, then you might be looking after grandkids from time to time. Well, installing baby seats in the Everest is pretty easy. You do have to push the passenger seat a little bit further forward than in some other large SUVs, but not to an uncomfortable point. The Isofix points are well exposed, so that's good for fitting the infant capsule. The top tether mounts are quite low on the seat back, so you do have to lengthen some of your straps there, but all in all, it was a pretty easy job, I reckon. And once the kids are back there, you can just about squeeze an adult in the middle, but they need to be somebody of a slender frame in order to do it. And apologies for the cicadas, it's just that season in Australia. So what's it going to cost you to run a Ford Everest, at least with the 2-litre full drive engine? Well, servicing is required every 12 months or 15,000 kilometres, and those first 5 years, 75,000 Ks, come to a total of $2,400. So it's a little bit dearer to maintain than a Toyota Fortuner, but it's not too bad. In terms of insurance, in the last 12 months, the median budget direct customer spent $919 to comprehensively insure a new Ford Everest. Everybody's situation varies and your premium will vary based on things insurers take into account, like where you live, how you garage the car, and who drives the car. The warranty on the Everest is 5 years with unlimited kilometres. And lastly, fuel consumption isn't too bad with the 2-litre diesel, though this isn't the thriftiest ute-based full drive we've tested. Across our combined driving, we managed about 9.2, 9.3 litres per 100 kilometres of diesel consumption in this car. Something like a Fortuner or Pajero Sport can usually dip below that 9 litre per 100 kilometre level. But again, I think it's something you can probably live with. So what is the Everest like to drive? Well, up the front of the video, I flagged that it's actually the driving dynamics of this off-road wagon that make it so special, and I think go quite some way to justifying the price. There's no getting around that the Ford Everest ain't cheap, and it's also getting on in years. It's about to be replaced, and unfortunately it's a perfect storm of bad supply in the car industry, so even run-out vehicles are not as cheap as they should be, including this one. But it doesn't feel old from behind the wheel, whether you're on road or off, as I am now, ascending quite a difficult little climb. There we go, full-time four-wheel drive in this vehicle, kicking in nicely, but we'll come back to that in a minute. First of all, let's talk about the first choice you have to make when you're buying an Everest, and that's what kind of engine you would like, because you can still get this car with Ford's older school 3.2 litre turbo diesel 5-cylinder engine, which makes 147 kilowatts of power and 470 newton meters of torque. But the flagship engine is the newer 2-litre bi-turbo diesel 4-cylinder engine, which makes more, 157 kilowatts of power and 500 newton meters of torque. So only a little jump, but it's obviously making that power and torque from a smaller engine. It gets slightly better fuel economy than the 5-cylinder. It's a little bit more refined than the 5-cylinder in my estimation. But just because the 4-pot makes more power and torque doesn't tell the entire story. The 5-cylinder, for instance, makes its peak torque of 470 newton meters over a broader spread from 1750 to 2500 RPM, whereas the 4-cylinder has a much narrower peak torque band that tops out at 2000 RPM. So horses for courses, but one way the 4-cylinder gets around it is via a newer 10-speed automatic transmission, which is actually well suited to diesel engines. I tend to think that in naturally aspirated petrols, like the Ford Mustang, it feels like a lot of gears for a car that needs a rev, whereas in the diesels, where they're making all of their peak torque at low RPM, the 10-speed auto works really well, seamlessly even, to keep the engine in its torque band flowing along well. And we were able to climb long hills on the F3 motorway going north out of Sydney in 10th gear at 100 kilometers per hour, which I think is pretty impressive. It keeps it quiet, it keeps fuel economy reasonably low, though it's not the most frugal vehicle in the segment. It will be interesting though when the new gen arrives, because the 2-litre 4-cylinder is going to become the base engine, and a new, well, not new, but reworked 3-litre diesel V6 from the Lion engine family will become the flagship unit for the 2023 Everest that we are driving very soon, and will become the mainstay of the range, maybe within 6 or 9 months from now. But I still think it's worth considering the outgoing Everest, because the ride and handling is a level above this vehicle's main rivals, like the Toyota Fortuner, Mitsubishi Pajero Sport, and even the new Isuzu MUX. Particularly in this Trend, which has 18-inch wheels rather than the 20s of the Sport and Titanium grades, the ride quality is just superb, and Ford's engineers have even been able to dial out the majority of the kind of sway and shimmy that gives away that this is a frame vehicle rather than something unibody like a Ford Escape SUV. It simply feels so much more cohesive and sorted than virtually any ute platform-based vehicle we've tested. The only thing that comes close would be Ford's own Ranger, the Volkswagen Amarok Ute, and also the Nissan Navara Warrior, which gets a full suspension redo right here in Australia, and you can tell. The Ranger and Everest, their homeroom within the Ford universe is here in Australia. It's in Melbourne, and so our local tastes and interests really do go into the development of this vehicle, and that shows from the way it's able to handle rough, coarse chip roads here in Australia, gravel, corrugations. It just is well sorted. Now, there's no arguing against Toyota dependability with the Fortuner, of course, being a Hilux-based vehicle. If you're going to subject it to rough roads constantly, you would want to certainly consider that car. But the Everest just feels a step above in terms of sophistication, and certainly as a touring vehicle, as a towing vehicle, using the 3,100 kilo brake towing capacity, I think it's a more comfortable car, it's a more compliant vehicle, it's quieter, and it feels a little bit more premium, a little bit more luxurious. So while it isn't the cheapest option, I think you tend to get what you pay for in this car. Now, you can save quite a lot of money by going for the 3.2 litre. If you don't need four-wheel drive, you save about $5,000 for going with rear-wheel drive, which is certainly something a lot of buyers could consider. There is the Ambiente base model underneath this one, but I'm not sure the value totally checks out on that car. It's still in the 50s, you get a plastic steering wheel, you get manual cloth seats. I think the Trend is kind of the sweet spot. It's about $13,000 less than the Titanium. Paying $80,000 for a ute-based wagon I think is a bit offensive, so I'd probably go for something like this. Refinement is good, it's a hushed car. Again, we've got really nice chunky sidewalls. There is a bit of wind whistle and wind noise from these big ass mirrors that we've got next to us here, but on the whole it's okay. Probably where the age is starting to show is in the tuning of the safety tech. The Everest still has more safety tech than some vehicles in this segment. It has an active lane keeping aid, for instance, but it's very rudimentary. It's only going to kick in very subtly if you touch the line. It certainly can't hold you in the center of the lane, which is always a nice thing to have on long motorway journeys, just to reduce fatigue. We do have adaptive cruise control, however, which is good to see, but no blind spot monitoring until you step up further in the range. And given this is a fairly big vehicle, that is a technology that we'd like to see. So all in all, Everest has aged very gracefully, particularly from behind the steering wheel. Very keen to drive the new gen car, but I wouldn't feel shortchanged buying this even now in early 2022. So those are my opinions on the outgoing UA Mark III Ford Everest Trend 2 litre bi-turbo full drive. It's really interesting to see that even so many years into this generation's lifespan, the Ford Everest is still really competitive, particularly in terms of driving dynamics, where it's clearly a class above cars like the Fortuner and the Pajero Sport. And I actually think it is better to drive than the MUX. Of course, a comparison would be required in order to definitively answer that question, because the new gen Isuzu is pretty impressive. But I think that the next generation Everest, which builds on the same underpinnings of this vehicle and is going to add a diesel V6, will definitely be a vehicle to watch. Let me know your comments down below. While you're down there, make sure to hit subscribe. Don't forget those handy links if you want to download the brochure, organize a test drive, or see every single color the Ford Everest comes in. And as always, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.